North Atlantic, April 1944. 200 miles off the New York coast. USS PC-1264, a 173-foot submarine chaser, cuts through heavy seas. Sonar technician Eric Purdon sits in the sound shack, headphones clamped tight, listening to the ocean. He's tracking something. Metallic echoes bouncing back from the hydrophone array, the distinctive signature of a submerged submarine. Contact bearing 270, range 1,800 yards. Purdon calls out. His voice is calm, professional. On the bridge, Lieutenant Eric Summer, white commanding officer of an all-black crew, orders the ship to attack stations. The crew responds instantly. Depth charge crews prepare weapons. Engine room pushes diesels to maximum speed. Gun crews man stations. PC-1264 is hunting a German U-boat. This shouldn't be happening. According to Navy policy in 1944, black sailors are supposed to be stewards and mess attendants, serving food, cleaning quarters, doing laundry. They're not supposed to operate complex sonar equipment, maintain diesel engines, or hunt submarines. But PC-1264 is different. This is one of only 2 ships in the US Navy, with predominantly black crews in combat roles. And they're not just operating the ship, they're exceeding performance standards of white crews on similar vessels. Purdon tracks the submarine. His sonar training is paying off. He can distinguish between a whale, a school of fish, a wreck, and an enemy submarine by sound alone. He calls out ranges and bearings with precision. Depth charges away. 4 300-pound charges drop from the stern, set to detonate at different depths. The ocean erupts, water geysers into the air. The crew waits for sounds that mean a kill. Breaking metal, escaping air, debris surfacing. Nothing definitive. The U-boat either escaped or went silent. But PC-1264 has done its job. Detected a submarine, attacked accurately, forced it to break off patrol. The convoy PC-1264 is protecting continues safely to port. Subscribe to see how an all-black crew operated one of the Navy's most technically demanding ships while proving racist assumptions wrong through excellence that couldn't be denied. This is USS PC-1264. An all-black crew operating sophisticated submarine hunting equipment. Hunting U-boats in the Atlantic while Navy brass questioned whether they were capable. Proving excellence through results. They weren't supposed to be here. But here they were, hunting U-boats better than anyone expected. USS PC-1264 was commissioned in April 1944 at Morris Heights, New York. She was a PC-class submarine chaser, 173 feet long, armed with 1 3-inch gun, depth charges, and sophisticated sonar equipment designed for one mission: hunt submarines. But PC-1264 was different from other submarine chasers in one crucial way. She was designated for a predominantly black crew. In 1944, the Navy was the most segregated branch of the U.S. military. Black sailors were restricted to steward rates, serving food, cleaning officers' quarters, doing laundry. They weren't allowed in technical rates or combat positions. The Navy's official position was that black sailors lacked intelligence and discipline for complex technical work. By 1944, political pressure was mounting. Civil rights organizations demanded integration. The Roosevelt administration needed black voters, and the Navy needed sailors. The war was consuming manpower faster than they could recruit white personnel. The Navy's compromise was cynical. Commissioned 2 ships with predominantly black crews in actual naval ratings, PC-1264 and her sister ship USS Mason. Put them in combat roles. See if they failed. Use their failure to justify continued segregation. The Navy expected failure. They made it as likely as possible. Finding a commanding officer for PC-1264 was difficult. White officers didn't want the assignment. Commanding an all-black crew was seen as career suicide. Lieutenant Eric Summer eventually took command when more senior officers refused. What he found was a crew that had been trained to exceptional standards precisely because the Navy wanted to test whether black sailors could handle complex operations. The enlisted crew had been selected carefully. They'd undergone the same technical training as white sailors: sonar operation, diesel engine maintenance, gunnery, seamanship, navigation. Many had scored higher on aptitude tests than average white recruits, but had been barred from technical training until this experimental program. Eric Purdon, the sonar technician, had tested in the top percentile for mechanical aptitude and auditory discrimination. Under normal Navy policy, he would have been assigned as a steward, regardless of abilities. Instead, he trained at the Navy's submarine detection school in Key West, learning to operate hydrophone equipment, distinguish between different underwater sounds, and track submarines with precision. The engineering crew trained on diesel engines, damage control, and electrical systems. Every man aboard received technical training the Navy normally denied to black sailors. The Navy's plan was to give them this training, put them in combat, and document their inevitable failure when they couldn't handle the stress and complexity of actual operations. The plan backfired spectacularly. PC-1264's shakedown cruise in early 1944 demonstrated the crew was not just competent, they were exceptionally skilled. Sonar detection rates exceeded Navy standards. Engineering reliability was outstanding. Gunnery scores were above average. When the ship joined the Atlantic Convoy Escort Force in spring 1944, commanders expected problems. They got performance that matched or exceeded white crews on similar vessels. The Atlantic in 1944 was the climax of the Battle of the Atlantic. German U-boats were conducting their last major offensive against Allied shipping. Convoy escorts needed to be vigilant, skilled, and aggressive. PC-1264 did all of this while operating under additional scrutiny. Every action was watched, evaluated, and documented by Navy observers looking for evidence to support segregation. Every mistake would be used as proof that black sailors couldn't handle combat. Every success would be quietly ignored or attributed to white officers. The crew knew they were under scrutiny. They knew they were representing not just themselves, but all black sailors. They knew failure would be used to justify continued discrimination, and they responded by being more professional, more skilled, and more dedicated than they had to be. By summer 1944, PC-1264 was operating regularly with Atlantic convoys. Her mission was straightforward but demanding: escort merchant ships, detect submarines before they could attack, drive them off, or destroy them. Submarine hunting with 1944 technology was part science, part art. The primary detection method was sonar, hydrophones that sent out sound pulses and listened for echoes. When a pulse hit something solid underwater, it bounced back. But distinguishing between a submarine and other underwater objects required skill and experience. Wrecks produced echoes. Large schools of fish produced echoes. Whales produced echoes. Temperature layers in water could create false returns. A skilled sonar operator had to learn the characteristics of different echoes. Submarines produced a distinctive metallic ring. Their echoes had a certain quality: sharp, clean, hollow-sounding. Experienced operators like Eric Purdon could identify a submarine contact with confidence after hearing just a few echoes. PC-1264's sonar crew achieved detection rates that impressed convoy commanders. In an era when many sonar contacts turned out to be false, PC-1264's contacts were reliably accurate. When Purdon called out a submarine contact, it was almost always real. This accuracy came from intensive training and natural ability, but also from motivation. The crew knew every contact would be scrutinized. They knew false alarms would be used as evidence that black sailors weren't capable. They were more careful, more thorough, more certain before calling contacts than many white crews who didn't operate under the same pressure. One engagement in June 1944 demonstrated their capabilities. PC-1264 was escorting a convoy when Purdon detected a submarine contact. The echo signature was clear, metallic, moving, at periscope depth. He tracked it for several minutes, calling out ranges and bearings with precision. The submarine was stalking the convoy, maneuvering into attack position. PC-1264 moved to intercept. The U-boat commander heard the submarine chaser's propellers and dove deeper, trying to escape detection. Purdon maintained contact. As the submarine went deeper, the echoes changed character. He adjusted his tracking, compensating for water conditions. PC-1264 attacked with depth charges. The explosions forced the U-boat to break off its attack and flee. The convoy continued safely. Post-action analysis confirmed Purdon's tracking had been accurate. The depth charges had detonated close to the submarine's position. This engagement was typical of PC-1264's operations. They didn't necessarily sink submarines. Submarine kills were rare for any anti-submarine vessel. But they detected submarines reliably, attacked accurately, and drove them away from convoys. That was the mission, and they excelled at it. The crew's performance extended beyond sonar operations. The engineering crew maintained the ship's diesel engines with reliability rates that exceeded Navy standards. The deck crew handled rough Atlantic weather professionally. Gun crews maintained their weapons and scored well in gunnery exercises. Every aspect of the ship's operation was scrutinized by Navy observers looking for failures to document. They found competence instead. PC-1264's maintenance records, operational reports, and performance evaluations consistently showed a crew performing at or above standards for similar vessels. This created a problem for Navy leadership. The official position was that black sailors couldn't handle complex technical operations. PC-1264 was proving otherwise. The solution was to ignore or downplay their performance while continuing to watch for failures that would justify segregation. But convoy commanders who worked with PC-1264 knew the truth. They requested the ship for escort duty. They praised the crew's performance in after-action reports. They recognized that PC-1264 was as effective as any submarine chaser in the Atlantic. By fall 1944, PC-1264 had escorted dozens of convoys across the Atlantic. They'd detected multiple submarine contacts. They'd conducted numerous depth charge attacks. They'd helped protect thousands of merchant sailors from U-boat attacks. And they'd done it all while operating under scrutiny that would have broken less disciplined crews. By early 1945, PC-1264 had compiled a record that should have silenced critics who claimed black sailors couldn't handle technical operations. The ship's performance metrics, sonar detection rates, maintenance reliability, operational availability, gunnery scores, all met or exceeded Navy standards. But official recognition was sparse. Navy public affairs rarely mentioned PC-1264, despite publicizing other submarine chasers with white crews. When the ship was mentioned, coverage focused on the experiment rather than operational achievements. The crew understood what was happening. They were succeeding, but their success was being ignored because acknowledging it would undermine segregation. Their response was to keep performing, keep proving themselves, keep maintaining standards that couldn't be dismissed. One metric was particularly striking: sonar contact accuracy. PC-1264's sonar crew had one of the highest rates of confirmed submarine contacts versus false alarms in the Atlantic escort force. When they reported a submarine contact, it was almost always verified as genuine. This accuracy mattered operationally. False submarine contacts wasted time and resources. PC-1264's accuracy meant efficient response and better protection for convoys. The engineering crew's performance was equally impressive. PC-1264's engineering reliability rates exceeded the Atlantic Fleet average for similar vessels. This reliability came from meticulous maintenance, careful operation, and personal pride. By war's end in May 1945, PC-1264 had escorted numerous convoys, detected multiple submarines, conducted dozens of depth charge attacks, and maintained operational standards that exceeded many white crews. Their performance had proven that black sailors could handle complex technical operations, combat stress, and sustained operations under difficult conditions. But that proof changed little immediately. The Navy continued segregation after the war. PC-1264's crew dispersed to other assignments, often returning to restricted rates. The ship was decommissioned in 1946. The story of USS PC-1264 didn't end with the ship's decommissioning. The crew's performance became part of the evidence base that eventually led to military integration. In 1948, President Truman issued Executive Order 9981, ordering integration of the armed forces. The order didn't happen in a vacuum. It was informed by evidence from World War II showing that black service members could perform effectively in combat and technical roles when given opportunity and training. PC-1264 and USS Mason were proof cases. They demonstrated that the Navy's segregation policies were based on prejudice rather than capability. Black sailors had operated complex equipment, hunted submarines, maintained ships, and performed under combat stress as effectively as white sailors. The Navy resisted integration longer than the Army or Air Force. But by the early 1950s, ratings were opened to black sailors, ships were integrated, and the steward-only policy ended. The performance of ships like PC-1264 had made segregation impossible to justify operationally. For the crew of PC-1264, recognition came slowly. Most served out their enlistments and returned to civilian life, facing the same segregation and discrimination they'd left. They'd proven themselves in combat, but that didn't grant them equal rights at home. Eric Purdon, the sonar operator, later spoke about his experience. "We proved we could do the job. We proved we were as good as anyone. But proving it didn't change things overnight. It took years for the military to integrate, and the country took even longer. But we knew we'd done something important. We'd shown it was possible." Modern Navy recognizes PC-1264's service. The ship is included in naval history exhibits. Crew members have been honored posthumously. The Navy acknowledges that PC-1264 helped prove the case for integration. USS PC-1264's story is ultimately about capability meeting opportunity. The crew consisted of men who'd been systematically denied opportunities because of their race. When finally given training and equipment, they proved as capable as any sailors in the Navy. The Navy's experiment failed in its intended purpose, to document that black sailors couldn't handle complex operations. Instead, it demonstrated the opposite. PC-1264's crew operated sophisticated sonar equipment, maintained complex diesel engines, hunted submarines effectively, and performed under combat stress. Their sonar detection rates exceeded fleet averages. Their engineering reliability surpassed standards. Their operational performance matched or exceeded white crews on similar vessels. Every metric suggested capability, not deficiency. The crew knew they were proving something beyond their individual service. They represented all black Americans who'd been told they weren't smart enough, disciplined enough, or capable enough for technical work. They carried that burden and turned it into motivation. Combat has a way of revealing truth. Technical operations either work or they don't. Ships either perform or they don't. PC-1264 worked, performed, and maintained standards. The small ship with the all-black crew that hunted Nazi U-boats better than anyone expected proved that capability transcends prejudice. They proved it through sonar contacts that were reliably accurate, through engineering that kept the ship operational, through professionalism under pressure. They weren't supposed to succeed. The Navy set them up as an experiment designed to fail. Instead, they succeeded beyond expectations and helped prove that segregation was based on lies. USS PC-1264, 173 feet of submarine chaser, with a crew that changed Navy history by doing their jobs so well that prejudice couldn't explain it away. The submarine hunters nobody expected, who proved excellence doesn't depend on race. It depends on opportunity, training, and determination.